Welcome to another eDesign Codemakers tutorial for game design. In this video, we're going to wrap up some of the advanced concepts that we've been discussing around the Unity game engine. Also, we want to make sure that you have the tools you need in order to start your own Unity project. Let's get started. In our previous video, what happened? Earl just got run over by a spawned object. But how did that happen? Let's take a look at the code. If I open up our obstacle code, you'll notice that as part of our obstacles, there's rigid bodies involved. With rigid bodies, what's interesting with the Unity game engine is that if one rigid body hits another rigid body, they interact in a way that we would expect in a real physics scenario. Another thing about the obstacle that you'll notice is there's that something around collisions. Let's go back to our editor and take a look at the obstacle object. But wait, there aren't any obstacle objects within our hierarchy, so how can I take a look at the obstacle object? What's really cool about Unity is you can create something called a prefab, or prefabricated object. The prefabricated object is basically created by a coder that is brought into the editor so that a game designer can use it and the functionality remains the same as the coder wanted it to function. So I've created a chair object, a garbage can object, and a picture object that anyone can utilize. If we look at the chair object, what's interesting on our script is there's some additional information that we can fill in. We can add a move force. We can also see if it's hit the player or not. These properties, we call them public. And for public properties, you can actually manipulate them right inside the editor. So therefore, if I switch back to my code, you'll notice that move force is just a property or a text. It's a variable that can change at any point in time, but we can change it within the editor. That's a real cool thing with Unity. We can also change them on the fly. Now, we were talking about some of the collision things, so let's go back and take a look at our object. Well, if you take a look at the chair, it has something called a box collider. So if I drag a chair onto the screen here, you'll notice there's a green box around it. What that denotes is that there's a collision zone within that object. So if this object hits another object that has a collision zone, something's bound to happen. Not just rigid bodies. Rigid bodies are meant for physics that seem real. So what happens with rigid bodies is that if I throw an object at another object, the game engine will do all the calculations on its own. But for colliders, what if I want something to hit a brick wall? Well, I don't really want to make that a rigid body because there's not really any properties that I need out of the rigid body for a wall. So with our obstacles, what I've done is we've added the colliders, and we've added this on-collision method here. Within the on-collision method, all this means is that when it hits something, find out what happened. So let's look at the code. If we look at the code, we notice that when a collision occurs, it checks to see if the object it hits is a player. If it's a player, it does some certain things. It will set its velocity to 0. It will tell it that we've hit the player. It'll also change some of the animations. That's pretty cool. We also have some other things around some of the other objects. You can take a look at this on your own time. Let's take a look at what happens with the animations, because we have talked about animations in the past. If we look at the animator, you'll notice that I have additional states. One is running, one is death. In this game, Earl needs to start moving a little faster than walking, so I've added running in there for him to start moving a little bit faster. Now, within the death animation, all it is that when something hits Earl, he needs to do something a little special so that we know that something's happened. These are just additional states, and you deal with them the same way that you dealt with moving from idle to walking. There's no real difference there for you. And that concludes our discussion around the advanced concepts of the Unity game engine. Now we also wanted to make sure that you had all of the tools you need in order to create a successful Unity project. The first thing that we're going to talk about is the Unity scripting reference. The Unity scripting reference contains all of the methods and properties within the Unity engine, so therefore you can make your objects do and be whatever you want them to be. The nice thing is you can also search the reference and find exactly what you're looking for. The next thing is we're going to make sure that you have this project in order to go through it and master all of the concepts that we've talked about in previous videos. There's also a ton of content online through YouTube, through other video sites, and through the Unity website in order for you to master this game engine and make the games that you want to make. This concludes our tutorial series for game design. I hope you've enjoyed our tutorial series and you can take this information and make the wonderful game that you've always wanted to make. Thank you for watching.